Every 20 years, the shores of Southern Reach swallow a generation whole. In 2004, it was Class 12A's turn. They called it the silent zone. No signal, no tire tracks, no screams. Just the wind weaving through the pine trees and a sky that seemed to forget how to make sound. The bus left Evercreek High on a Saturday morning, filled with laughter backpacks, hope, and promises to come back. But no one ever did. 18 students, 2 teachers, a field trip with no return. For nearly 2 decades, every search led nowhere, until a violent storm unearthed the bus, roof rusted, decayed, and filled with remnants that defied time itself. Hollow Pine was a quiet little town tucked away in South Carolina, where pine forests stretched all the way to the ocean, and the church was where people gathered on Sundays, on graduation days, and for just about everything in between. At the heart of it all was Evercreek High. Friday night football, the fall carnival, and teenage memories passed down like old family stories. Class 12A that year wasn't known for its grades, but for its bond. They'd grown up together since kindergarten, close enough to read each other's thoughts or know exactly what someone was trying to hide. Melina was the head cheerleader, skin like bronze in sunlight, long braided ponytail, and a smile that could soften a whole gymnasium. The only daughter of a famously strict pastor, she was the picture-perfect girl 4.0 GPA, active in charity work, the kind of kid every parent wanted their child to be friends with. But after graduation, Melina had plans to leave. She'd secretly accepted a performing arts scholarship in Atlanta. Her parents didn't know. In quiet nights, she wrote in her journal about the fear of freedom. If I'm no longer Melina from this town, then what's left of me? Isaiah was the star quarterback black, 6'3" with eyes that always looked down, like he was apologizing to the world for taking up so much space. His mom, Janice, worked the night shift as a nurse, 30 miles out, but never missed a single game. Isaiah was quiet, respectful, and never spoke of his father, a man wrongfully arrested for robbery released when Isaiah was 12, then gone again. This beach trip felt like a final reward before starting fresh on a full ride to the University of North Carolina. In his backpack, he carried an old Bible knot out of faith, but because it was the only thing his dad ever left behind. Sophie, daughter of the Vietnamese couple who owned the town's only laundromat, was always quiet, always watching. She usually sat in the back of the class, sketching eerie scenes into her notebook, empty forest's water with no reflection, a school bus sinking into sand. She said they came from dreams, but what kind of dream returns night after night, each time in perfect detail? On the morning of the trip, she pressed a folded note into her best friend's hand. If that place is real, don't call it a vacation. It's not letting us come back. One of the students claimed they had dreamed of the bus buried in Sandat, the exact spot it was discovered 17 years later. But it wasn't just the students who were tied to Class 12A. The adults were too. 2 teachers joined the trip, Ms. Angela Whitmore, the English teacher, who ended every lesson with a Shakespeare quote, and Mr. Raymond Ellis, the biology teacher, who spent spring afternoons planting with his students in the school's garden. Ms. Whitmore, never married, poured her life into her students and had suggested the beach trip as a farewell to youth. Mr. Ellis, with salt and pepper hair and a calm, steady voice, once warned don't wander too far to the other side of the shore. The undertow can take the whole world with it. At the time, it sounded like a metaphor. Around town, parents were a mix of excitement and unease. Janice, Isaiah's mom, hesitated before signing the permission slip. She said she'd had a strange dream, a knock on the door in the middle of the night, but when she opened it, only a sand-covered shoe sat on the porch. Melina's father, Pastor Malik, prayed through the night at church. "The Lord is always with you," he told them. But his heart felt restless. The trip was meant as a goodbye gift, but no one said out loud what they were really hoping for. For the teachers, it was the closing of a chapter. For the parents, it was a quiet message. We've done our best. Now it's your turn to go. What none of them knew was that this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. A lesson that wouldn't be found in any textbook. A mystery that not even the wisest adults could explain. In the final week before departure, strange things began to creep into every corner of Hollow Pine. The lights in classroom 12A flickered every late afternoon, despite maintenance crews finding nothing wrong. In the biology lab, A skeleton model collapsed on its own, though no one had touched it. Out on the field, Isaiah once said he felt someone watching him from the tree line during his morning runs, but when he turned, he saw only shadows and fog. On Thursday night, just before the trip, a student named Bryce was rushed to the nurse's office in a full panic. He shouted, "I heard whispering under the school. Something's down there, calling our names." Strangely, Bryce wasn't even on the list for the Traphis. Mom had forbidden it due to bad grades. Sophie drew something new. Unlike her earlier dream sketches, this one showed a circle in the sand with 20 shadowy figures standing still. No faces, no hands. In the center of the circle was a clock its hour hand, broken its minute hand spinning backward. Ms. Whitmore wrote a letter to her sister out of state. One line read, "I don't know why, but something tells me this trip will be the last thing I ever do as a teacher." The letter was never sent. It was later found in her desk drawer, stamped but unsealed. And the night before they left, several students said they had the same dream, standing on a beach, watching themselves board a school bus. But the driver wasn't Mr. Ellis. He wore a cap pulled low over his eyes, his hands marked with scars, and his gaze dark and endless, reflected like water. June 12th, 2004. The sky was crystal clear, not a single cloud in sight. Bus number 47 pulled up in front of Evercreek High at exactly 6:50 a.m. A few parents stood nearby waving, beaming. Some held camcorders recording the moment their children climbed aboard, arms full of pillows and sleeping bags. It was a moment they'd replay over and over, like, if they watched it enough times, things might somehow go back to the way they were. Melina was the last to step onto the bus. She paused for a few seconds at the door, eyes locked on her father, Pastor Malik, silently praying with a worn Bible in his hands. She didn't promise to call. She simply smiled and nodded. At 7:10 a.m., the bus pulled away. The driver was Mr. Dale Murphy, a substitute, filling in after Mr. Ellis hurt his back and couldn't handle the long ride. Murphy had retired from school bus driving 3 years earlier. No one knew why he agreed to drive that day. The group headed south, taking the forest-lined road towards Southern Reach Beach Place, with no phone reception, no signal towers, and only one narrow trail leading in. At 9:37 a.m., the last known message was sent from Sophie Nguyen's phone. "The sun is warm on my back. The sand feels soft like a memory. But why do I feel so cold inside?" The message was never answered. At 11:20 a.m., the sky changed color. A sudden gust of wind blew in from the sea. Locals living near the forest said they heard a screeching metal sound like brakes on stone, then complete silence. After that, there were no more calls, no texts, no photos, and most chilling of all, no one could confirm seeing the bus enter the Southern Reach gate. As the evening dragged on without any news, a few parents started calling each other. They tried reaching Ms. Whitmore and Mr. Ellis, but all phones were out of service. At first, everyone assumed the bus had simply lost its way or the signal was weak in such a remote area. But as night fell and a storm moved inland from the coast, worry gave way to fear. The next morning, Evercreek High opened early. The principal's office phone rang nonstop. Principal Denise Carter called the county sheriff. A full-scale search was launched at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Rescue teams, police, K-9 units, and helicopters were immediately deployed. They started from the only road into Southern Reach, through pine woods and white sand dunes. What they found or didn't was baffling. No tire tracks, no signs of impact, not even a single broken branch along the path. It was as if the bus had never passed through. 3 days later, a search team discovered a red scarf, Melina's caught on a branch near a fork in the trail, 3 miles from the main beach. Nearby, they found a strange dent in the soil, crescent-shaped. No footprints, no tire marks. No one could explain what made it. And right at that spot, one of the K-9s suddenly barked uncontrollably, then bolted, refusing to return. The handler later said it was like it smelled something, not of this world. For the next 2 weeks, nearly 100 volunteers combed the woods, dunes, and coastline. They found nothing. No backpacks, no snack wrappers, no scraps of paper. One woman who lived nearby claimed that on the night of the storm, she saw flashing yellow lights deep in the forest, thought it was a rescue vehicle. But when she got closer, there was nothing but trees and wind. Her report was never confirmed. Local news covered the story daily, calling it the biggest tragedy in Hollow Pine history. Families camped out at the site, holding vigils praying. Some parents handed out flyers across neighboring towns, hoping for a miracle. But by week 3, the search was scaled back. The sheriff's office announced there's no evidence of an accident or a crime. But there's also no evidence they ever reached Southern Reach. A month later, the search was officially called off. The case was marked as missing under unknown circumstances. All that remained was a bulletin board covered in photos, messages, and wax candles melting in the rain. Someone scrawled a line across the wooden frame. The bus went into the woods, but the woods never answered. 2 months after the search ended, Hollow Pine fell into a strange rhythm, half acceptance, half denial. Evercreek reopened, but the empty seats in Class 12A were left untouched. Some parents proposed a memorial on school grounds, but Principal Denise refused. "We're not ready to call them the past," she said. During a cleanup of the old classroom, the physics teacher found a mini camcorder under the desk of Jaretta missing student. The footage ran 13 minutes, showing kids laughing and singing on the bus that morning. But what chilled everyone was the final shot. At second 7:56, the camera turned to the window. Through the fogged glass, a figure stood motionless in the woods, draped in a dark coat, a hat pulled low, face obscured. No one remembered anyone like that, neither staff nor locals. A tech team reanalyzed Sophie's GPS data. At exactly 9:48 a.m., the day she vanished, her signal abruptly jumped 1.8 kilometers west of the beach deep in the forest, in a spot with no trail. Then the signal died completely. Janice Isaiah's mother requested access to the initial search logs. She found a strange note one rescuer had originally written about spotting unusual tire tracks, smaller than a school bus belonging to some unknown vehicle. But the line was later crossed out and replaced with no vehicle evidence found. No one in the team remembered editing that report. In the teacher's lounge, someone found a photocopy of Sophie's graduation essay. It was titled, "The Trip No One Came Back from a Journey Through the Unnamed Space." A fictional short story about a group of students who enter a forest in search of a gate leading to a place where dreams haven't yet forgotten who they are. In the final scene, the narrator wakes up in a white room. No name, no time, just one question scrawled on the ceiling. Do you stay or return to a place where no one believes you? Ms. Whitmore had once marked the essay as emotionally brilliant, but too disconnected from reality. But to those left behind, it no longer felt like fiction. Nearly a year after the case had gone cold, a post on Reddit stirred the local online community. An anonymous user named Everwatcher999 claimed they had seen the Evercreek school bus crossing Forest Lane on the morning of the disappearance, but what stood out was this: the bus had no headlights on, there were no students inside, and the driver didn't match anyone listed in public records. The post was deleted within hours. Shortly after, police received an anonymous call from a man claiming to be a former National Park security guard. He said he had once heard children screaming from the northern edge of the Southern Reach Forest on the night of June 12, 2004. But when he reported it, his superior told him, leave it out of the log. False alarms cause panic. His name was never revealed. A former teacher of Class 12A, Mr. Kessler, said he once received a strange postcard from Idaho. There was no return address, just a handwritten line, "They're not far. Don't forget the forest remembers the way." The handwriting resembled Jared's, but there was no way to confirm it. Local media began to question the inconsistencies. Why were conflicting reports about time sightings and people left out of official records? Why had certain witness statements disappeared or been altered? And more importantly, who had something to gain by making the disappearance incomprehensible? 4 years after the incident, Lydia Kane, a geology student from the University of Charleston, was surveying terrain near Southern Reach when she stumbled upon a decaying cabin not listed on any map. Inside, beneath dust and tangled vines, she found an old, faded group photo 18 teenagers in Evercreek uniforms. But something chilled her to the core. There were 2 extra people in the picture, standing apart at the back. Heads slightly bowed, faces blurred as if deliberately smudged. She handed the photo over to local authorities. They kept it for investigation, but later claimed the image quality is too poor to verify anything. Lydia recalled their demeanor changed after seeing the photos if they'd seen something they weren't supposed to. That same year, at a vintage book fair in Savannah, Georgia, a woman named Rachel Mills found a brown leather journal that had slipped off a shelf. Inside the front cover, Angela Whitmore, summer 2004. The pages were disjointed, out of order. One entry written in red ink read, "The driver that day wasn't Mr. Murphy. I know his voice, and that morning the man said nothing." Another read, "Sophie looked at me before we left. She didn't say a word, but her eyes, it was like she was apologizing. I wish I'd understood." Rachel turned the journal over to police. It disappeared during the investigation. Around that time, students from the younger class years began recalling vague memories of a watcher at school the week before the trip. They described a man in a long gray coat, wearing black gloves, who lingered silently at the far end of the hallway. No one remembered any visitor being authorized. In the one surviving security clip, there was only a flash and indistinct figure near the lockers, vanishing as the camera glitched. A new theory spread online: someone or a group had been watching, interfering, or orchestrating the trip, not as a kidnapping, but as a ritual. Still, the questions remained: who and why. In a declassified police file obtained at the request of the families, one nearly forgotten statement surfaced, untouched for almost 2 decades. It came from Flora Jenkins, who owned the corner store just 500 meters from Evercreek High. She swore that around 6:40 a.m. on June 12th, she saw a yellow school bus stopped outside her shop. Strangely, there was no one inside. Lights on, engine running, seats empty. She stepped out, intending to get closer, but the bus slowly rolled away, driverless, silent, vanishing around the bend by the church. At the time, police dismissed her account as a mistake or hallucination. Flora never changed her story. In 2020, former student Elena Marsh, who was in Class 11A, and Sophie's close friend, posted a video sharing a story she'd never dared to tell. In it, she recalled the night before the trip, when Sophie came to her house in a panic, eyes red, clutching a hand-drawn map, whispering, "If anything happens, don't believe anyone who says they saw us. People only see what they want to believe." Elena thought Sophie was just overwhelmed and tucked the map away. But now, she believes Sophie knew something. The map later found in Elena's belongings marked a forest area 4 miles from Southern Reach, with 3 connected circles and a penciled note, "The place without time. The place where we were called." A new teacher at Evercreek High, while reviewing the case files, noticed something no one had in 17 years. The official 2004 roster for Class 12A listed 20 names, yet everyone remembered only 18 students went on the trip. The last 2 names, Kevin Holder and Elise Tranware, never mentioned in the news. No records, no photos, no known relatives. No one knows if they ever truly existed, if they were among the blurred faces in the photograph Lydia found in the forest cabin. From that point on, the story was no longer about those who disappeared. It became a story about who was actually there, and whether somehow the entire town had been made to forget 2 names, 2 lives, 2 pieces of memory, for a reason no one dares to name. In the winter of 2022, a young woman named Camille Davisa, psychology major at the University of Georgia, began posting about recurring dreams on her personal blog. For 3 months straight, she dreamed of standing at the edge of a forest, watching a yellow school bus slither across the sand like a giant snake before vanishing into a wall of pines with no exit. What finally pushed her to share was the moment she recognized someone on the bus, Melina Carter. The problem: Camille had never been to Hollow Pine. She didn't know anyone connected to the disappearance. A professor specializing in subconscious studies noticed the post and reached out to Melina's family. Through detailed descriptions, Camille not only identified Melina's face with eerie precision, she also recounted a conversation from the morning of the trip, word for word, with exact expressions. A conversation that had never been made public, only preserved in private family notes. The story was kept quiet for months, but eventually spread online. People began to ask, did Camille have some hidden connection to the case, or was she, as some began to believe, Elise Tran, one of the 2 names that didn't exist? A group of independent journalists followed the paper trail and discovered Camille had once lived at St. Teresa's home for girls in orphanage, whose records were destroyed in a fire in 2006. The year she was adopted matched the year of the disappearance. When asked about the name, Elise Tran Camille's expression went blank for a moment. Then she whispered, "I dreamed that name once. It was written on a wall, in my handwriting." Questions about Camille Davis' identity spread fast. Was she just a girl with strange dreams, or was she someone who had once disappeared, returned without anyone realizing? In March 2023, a podcast called Untold Hollow featured a shocking revelation from Marla Stanton, a former administrative assistant at Evercreek High. She said she had once reviewed a hallway security tape from the morning of the bus trip. In a 26-second clip, a man in a maintenance uniform entered classroom 12A, carrying a black box, then vanished off-screen. The school had no record of any staff matching that description, and when Marla reported it, she was told not to speak of it again for legal safety. After retiring, she kept a copy of the footage on an external drive, but in 2010, her apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen except that hard drive. Also on the podcast, a former student named Troy Bennett, who was a year below Class 12A, shared that a few days after the disappearance, Mr. Raymond Ellis called him into the science lab. There, Ellis asked about a drawing Troy had made of a dream summoning machine. Troy had no memory of the sketch, but Mr. Ellis seemed deeply disturbed. Before Troy left, Ellis said, "If anyone asks, you were never here." 2 weeks later, Ellis went missing during a solo camping trip. No official report was ever filed. When journalists revisited the school's staff records, they discovered something alarming. Dale Murphy, supposed driver, never signed the June 2004 schedule. In fact, his retirement file listed him as having left the state in May. So, who was behind the wheel that day? And one final detail. On June 10th, 2 days before the trip, Ms. Whitmore received a mysterious package with no return address. Inside was a slim book titled "The Road That Isn't on the Map," with a handwritten note. "Children hear what adults have forgotten. Let them remember." The book disappeared after the incident. No one at the school recorded it, except for a single margin note in the school's logbook, "Don't open unless you're ready." In August 2023, a 7-minute video appeared on YouTube from an anonymous account called Last Witness 22. Shot in a dark room, the speaker's voice was distorted. "I was there. I can't stay silent anymore." At first, people thought it was just internet horror bait, until the 3rd minute when the speaker revealed a detail only the 2004 search team could have known. 1.3 kilometers east of Southern Reach, there's a crescent-shaped clearing where radio signals cut out for 9 full minutes. A former technician later confirmed this. The person in the video claimed to be a last-minute backup, called in to replace someone else who'd dropped out. They didn't give a name, but hinted they were a contract tech brought in to assist with trip logistics. According to their account, they were instructed to install a signal booster inside the bus. But what they received wasn't a booster, it was a small black, unmarked box. It was unusually heavy, and when opened, it was empty. But inside, it absorbed sound. When they placed the box in the center of the bus, they said something changed. People grew silent, light around them dimmed, and the air filled with the scent of wet metal. They fled the bus, moments before it left the school, and never returned. For 19 years, they lived under a new identity, terrified of the people who paid for it. The video ended with a chilling line. "That bus didn't just go to Southern Reach. It crossed into somewhere we don't have a map for. I saw it. I was never me again after that." 2 days later, the account was deleted, the video taken down, but copies spread across forums. Attached was one final image, a hand-drawn scan. A school bus no license plate sitting between 2 rows of broken trees. Above it, a black sun, and scrawled across the top, "We were never allowed to come back." In November 2023, Daryl Morgan, a law student working on a thesis titled "Due Process in Unresolved Disappearances," stumbled upon a peculiar detail buried within the original Evercreek investigation files. At the Hollow Pine Public Library, he discovered an unaltered copy of the 2004 report. One line stood out. The bus GPS stopped transmitting at coordinates 34.7552 and 82.9331 Juan area withdrawn from military maps since 1991. But in all current public records, the coordinates had been changed to point to the center of southern reach, a location that had never shown signal interference or any trace of the missing bus. Daryl contacted the media, and veteran journalist Hank Lee began digging deeper. He uncovered that, in 2005, all of Evercreek High's digital records were outsourced to a private contractor called Aegis Data Solutions, a company previously involved in classified military research during the 1980s. Aegis went bankrupt shortly afterward. No one knows where their archives went. A former teacher from that year, who requested anonymity, revealed right after the disappearance, a group of men in black suits showed up at the school. No badges. They demanded access to the security system, took every recording from Classroom 12A, and left without filing a report. Soon after his findings went public, Daryl began receiving anonymous warnings. One email simply read, "Records are for remembering." But some things are better left forgotten. The discoveries gave rise to a troubling theory that someone had deliberately erased trails, manipulated public perception, and engineered confusion to ensure the truth remained unreachable. By early 2024, a coalition of independent researchers, including amateur sleuths, scientists, and spiritual theorists, launched a project called Evercreek Re-Entry. Their goal to recreate the exact bus route using declassified maps, satellite imagery, and weather logs from the time. While reconstructing the path, the group found an old access road sealed off, since 1999 leading deep into the Shadow Pines Hills. Military maps from the 1980s listed it as a former training site for non-signal navigation exercises. After an undisclosed accident in 1991, the area was quietly removed from all civilian documentation. One team member, Dr. Melanie Rhodes, an acoustic physicist, confirmed that the region emits rare infrasound frequencies, capable of disrupting time perception and spatial awareness. During a field study near the suspected location, her team recorded repeating whispers, not in any known language, not quite human. Meanwhile, behavioral analyst Isaac Black reviewed every account from the past 20 years. His conclusion was chilling. Every element, the gray-coded figure, the black device, the bottomless box, the metallic scent matches forgotten disappearances from the 1970s across other states. A bigger question emerged. What if Evercreek wasn't an isolated case? What if it was just another cycle, repeating with the same blueprint, the same roles, the same vanishing? So only the places and times changed. But just as these theories began to form a coherent picture, the evidence began to vanish. The project's website crashed. Videos were taken down. Team members reported being watched, followed, or experiencing strange accidents. Once again, the Evercreek case fell back into shadow. No closure, no culprits, no solid proof. Only growing unease. And for the first time, even the most committed researchers began to wonder if every theory collapses, what truth could possibly remain? 2 weeks after Evercreek Re-Entry was shut down, an anonymous email hit every inbox on the team. Subject line, "You haven't looked closely." Attached was a single-file satellite footage from June 12th of 2004, timestamped 9:56 a.m. At first glance, it showed nothing but forest cloud cover and a faint shaft of light, but when enhanced between two lines of trees stood a rectangular shape, roughly the size of a school bus. The roof appeared open. Low resolution made it impossible to identify precisely, but one detail made everyone freeze. Behind the bus, stretching into the woods, was a procession of faint, shadow-like figures. Not 18, not 19, 20. At the same time, Logan T., a former Evercreek student helping organize a memorial archive, found an unlabeled VHS tape buried in an old storage box. He played it. The tape captured the final parent-teacher meeting before the trip. Fixed angle, poor quality. But at the 18-minute mark, the camera panned across the parent section, and there he was. A man seated at the end of the row. Gray coat, hat, blurred face. The same figure seen in Camille's dream, in Lydia's forest photo, in Flora Jenkins' eyewitness account. And the worst part, he didn't move, not once. For the full 40-minute recording, as others shifted, stood, coughed, whispered, he remained utterly still, like a statue. Logan submitted the tape to the town archive. 3 days later, it was gone. The system displayed only an error, file corrupt, access denied. And just like that, all the threads were pulled back to the beginning. No longer asking what happened to Class 12A, but rather who was sitting at the end of the room and why did no one notice him for nearly 2 decades. 2 decades later, Hollow Pines still keeps a quiet corner of the Evercreek High courtyard to remember Class 12A. No stone memorial, no statue, just 18 empty chairs arranged in a circle, each bearing the name of a student. But recently, people began noticing 2 new chairs. Nameless, unclaimed, appearing in the night. When asked, school officials had no idea who brought them. Stranger still, the chairs were always perfectly placed, as if they'd been there from the beginning. Mrs. Malik Molina's mother still lives in the same old house just beyond the tree line. Every morning she makes 2 breakfasts, one for herself and one she sets by the window for the children who haven't made it home. She says that on the 19th anniversary, she heard footsteps on the wooden porch and caught the scent of orange blossom, perfume Molina's favorite, discontinued since 2005. No one was outside, but the teacup she left out was still warm. Most of the other parents have left town. Some passed away by illness, by grief, by guilt too heavy to name. Yet each one kept the same thing, the Class 12A yearbook photo. And recently, a local photographer claimed the image was changing, a shadow in the background growing clearer with time, as if someone or something was slowly coming back. Outside Hollow Pine, no one speaks of the Evercreek disappearance. There are no case files, no documentaries, no mention in legal studies. It's as if some invisible hand scrubbed the story from history. But those who remain, they don't need archives to remember. They just want one quiet night, with no knocking at 3 a.m., no wind from the forest, no lingering feeling of being watched. For 20 years, certain stories were whispered only at midnight, not out of fear, but because the listener might never see the world the same again. One of those stories belongs to DeAndre Foster, student of Class 11B in 2004, who almost boarded the bus that morning but fell ill at the last minute. He never forgot the sight of the yellow bus pulling away. But what haunted him wasn't the loss. It was the dream that followed, again and again, for 20 years. In the dream, he was on the bus. Laughter, light. But then the sky darkened. Faces began to melt. The sound became a low hum, and a voice whispered in his ear, "We still remember." "Do you," he told the dream to a therapist once. She died of a stroke 3 weeks later, leaving behind an audio recording that no one has dared to play past the final minute. In 2024, DeAndre published a piece on Medium titled, "I Think I Remember What We're All Trying to Forget." In it, he described seeing a handwritten class list by Sophie. It listed 20 names, but the last 2 weren't Kevin or Elise. They were DeAndre and one other name blacked out with ink. No one believed him. But a consciousness researcher read the article and confirmed that collective memory suppression has occurred before trauma so vast that a community unknowingly erases reality to protect itself. DeAndre believed maybe Class 12A didn't disappear. Maybe the world just forgot them. And maybe if someone remembers enough, believes enough, they'll return. Because when memory is twisted, lost and rewritten, truth can become fiction, and fiction can become all we have left. The question is no longer, what happened to Class 12A? But what did we choose to forget so we could keep living? If one day you find yourself driving south through Georgia, turn left at the unmarked junction past the abandoned gas station, cross the wooden bridge with the rusted sign, you might arrive in Hollow Pine. Or not, because officially that town doesn't exist. Google Maps will spin and fail. Your GPS will blink, then reroute you. And if you ask the locals, they'll smile not kindly and say, "Oh, that place, just a story." But if you keep driving, if you don't turn back, if you listen closely, you might hear wheels on gravel, children laughing, and a faint tune like someone playing an old graduation song no one's ever been able to find. They say that once a year, on the night of June 12, Hollow Pine returns. No one knows why, no one knows from where. Only those who have lost something or someone can see it. And the town, it doesn't welcome tourists. Only those who carry a question too heavy for words. Those who look into the silence and hear their name called by a voice they once loved, or lost, or tried to forget. Hollow Pine, the town with no map, Class 12A, the trip with no destination. But if you arrive at just the right moment, you might see them, or at least see the bus. Parked at the forest's edge, door slightly ajar, as if waiting for one last passenger. And now the question isn't what happened to them. It's would you dare get on? If you've made it this far, maybe you feel what we feel. Some disappearances don't just take individuals. They leave behind questions that echo through an entire community. Holopine Class 12A and the bus that never returned. They're not just someone else's story. They're a reminder sometimes truth doesn't vanish. It just hides where we've forgotten how to look. Maybe you felt it too, a loss with no explanation. A silence no one believed. A memory that slipped through the cracks of your mind, like something you were meant to remember, but didn't know how.